Hello, my name is LoG and welcome to part 2 of this Staggered Pattern Power-Up. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. And now let's get started with part 2. Okay, let's recap what we did with part 1 and then we'll start part 2. So remember, we're just playing these kind of staggered arpeggio shapes, looked like this. Just like that. That's the last note of part 1. That will be the first note of part 2. Now, keep in mind, when we play part 2 like this by itself, that first note we are going to pick because we need to pick the first note. However, once we run the whole exercise, this note within the whole power-up is not going to be picked. That will be hammered on, right? That's how we're getting to it from the end of part 1. Hammer on, right? Again, we're going to hammer that on when we're doing the whole exercise, both parts combined. But for this just singular part 2, we will be picking this note. But I would also keep in mind that when we run the whole thing, we're not going to be picking that. Okay, just throwing that out there for the beginning. So let's just go over the part. Same idea, suspended 7 arpeggios, and it looks like this. Just kind of walking up and down in the same way, kind of this staggered pattern, creating some interesting accent patterns. So the part is actually really simple. We're starting here on this 1 up the octave, right? There's our 1, there's the 1 again. We're literally just walking up to the next 1 up the octave. That would be just 1, 4, 5, 1. Remember, we're not playing that flat 7 like we were down here. We're skipping it, going right to the 1. So that's 1, 4, 5, 1, like that. Once we hit this 1, we just walk back to the other 1. So 1, 4, 5, 1, 5, 4, 1. That's it, right? Again, kind of like we talked about in part 1, just choosing a place to turn around or start from creates these patterns in a cool way. So again, we're playing 1 up to 1, backwards. Now, once we hit the 1 on the bottom again, we're actually jumping up to the 5 right there. So a little bit of a jump from that 1 to 5. And we'll talk about what the right hand is doing in a second. And this one's really easy. We just walk from the 5 down to the other 5, right? The 5 down the octaves. That's just this. Just like that. 5, 4, 1, flat 7, 5, right? So let's play that. So 1 to 1, back to the other 1. Up to the 5, we'll just jump right to the 5. We're not walking to the 5, jump right to it. 5 down to the other 5, just like that. Okay, once we hit this 5, we go up to the 1, jump right up to it, which is just down a 4th like that, right? We hit this 1, walk down to the low 1, right? 1, flat 7, 5, 4, 1. So it's kind of interesting that I didn't plan this. When I put this together, it's not what I was thinking, but it's kind of interesting that it worked out like that. It's always like a 1 to the other 1 and then back, and then 5 to the other 5, and then 1 to the other 1. Kind of interesting. So let me play that part one more time. So it starts with 1 to 1 and back. And that's just 1, 4, 5, 1, 5, 4, 1. Once we hit this 1, we're jumping up to the 5, jumping right to it. 5 all the way down to the other 5. 5, 4, 1, flat 7, 5. Then jump up to the 1, just right to it. Skipping the flat 7, just go right to it. 1 down to 1. Right? 1, flat 7, 5, 4, 1. So the whole thing, everything connected sounds like this. Again, some really cool, in my opinion, accent patterns that we get by doing this kind of staggered run. Right? I really like that sound. It creates, even though we're playing straight notes, we're playing ba-ba-ba-ba, like straight 16th notes, it actually has like a rhythm to it because of where those accents are. It doesn't just sound like, just running straight 16th notes over and over again. Cool sound, in my opinion. So that's pretty much the part. Really simple. I'll play it one more time, and then we'll talk about the right hand. So again, 1 to 1 and back. Jump up to 5, down to 5, up to 1, walk down to 1. That's it. Notice my left hand fingering. There's a couple little spots in there where I'm kind of playing the same fret with a couple fingers that might or might not be comfortable for you. So feel free to adjust the fingering to your liking. But I'm doing this. Right, that's middle ring, pointer, pinky, like that. Walking back the same way. That run right there, that's pointer, ring, middle, pointer, middle. And I'm using middle, not ring right there, even though that might naturally feel comfortable because I'm playing middle finger and then going right with that ring finger to descend the shape like that. So that's middle finger on the 5, then the ring finger on the root, walking back like that. So that, of course, you don't have to do that. I find it to be comfortable, but it's completely up to you. So that's the fingering I'm using. So let's talk about the right hand. Same kind of concept as we were talking about before. I'm going to sneak in my finger once in a while to make sure that I can flow through this part easily because it's just easier for me to play. So that would look something like this. If you can kind of catch what I'm doing. So I'm starting here with a pick. Remember, like I mentioned earlier, when we run this whole exercise, that is not going to be picked. We're going to be hammering on right there. But for now, let's pick it. So pick, and I'm using my middle finger right here on that B string, then pointer finger on the high A string, hammering on to that top note. Actually, I take that back. When I'm playing this at the top tempos, I'm definitely hammering that on like that. But when I'm playing it slow, I actually don't. It's kind of up to you to figure out whichever's comfortable. So that's pick, finger, pick. Let's say I'm picking it for now. Upstroke, pull off. Then I'm doing 2 upstrokes or an upstroke to handle both of those notes. Like that. Economy or sweep picking, whatever you want to call it. Now, once I do that, jump up with a downstroke to nail that 5 up top. Same upstroke to handle both of these notes, the 4 and the 1. Then I'm pulling off to the flat 7. Notice my right hand is prepping that 5, right? While I'm doing the pull off, like we talked about in part 1. Then that's just simply a downstroke, pull off, 2 upstrokes or 1 upstroke, handling both of those notes, and then a final downstroke. So let me play that a little slow. Looks like this. So the idea, whenever I'm moving this way through multiple strings, and 1 note per string, I'm almost always doing multiple downstrokes, but I usually do a downstroke for the first note of the group. So if I'm walking down 3 strings like this, like that, a lot of people would just do 1 upstroke for all 3 of those. Like that, up, 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 or 1 upstroke for all 3. Personally, I actually like to do the first note of the group with a downstroke, and then upstrokes to handle everything else. It just feels a lot more comfortable for me. It kind of rhythmically feels better. I like to have accents with downstrokes. It just feels better for me as opposed to this. That just feels like there's no accent because I'm just starting with an upstroke, and I don't naturally upstroke when I'm trying to do an accent like that. That's way more comfortable for me. I'm just doing something like this. Way more comfortable than trying to do all upstrokes. Like you can hear, I sound terrible, right? That's way easier for me to do. So oftentimes if I am doing a figure that's moving, down in pitch or up on the fretboard, I guess, and there's 3 notes, 1 note per string, I will usually do downstroke and then upstrokes for the rest. So I start with a downstroke and then that 1 upstroke to handle the rest. So that's something you'll see a lot throughout these kinds of patterns. So let me recap everything. So that's downstroke on the first note of this pattern on the 1. The 4 right here on the B string, middle finger, that's what I'm doing. Then I'm picking downstroke, upstroke, play that note a little better, reach a little more. There's the upstroke pulling off, right, in this case. Then upstrokes, right, down to the 5, pulling off from the 1 to flat 7, upstroke on the 5, then go up to the 1, pull off, upstroke to handle those 2 notes coming down. Let me play it one more time without talking. From the beginning, here we go. One more time. It's really up to you to figure out how you want to, or where you want to pick, or where you want to pull off, etc. It's really a personal thing. Everyone kind of has their own way to flow through these passages. So honestly, the best thing I would do, you can listen to what I'm saying and try out what I'm doing, but by all means, don't feel like you have to. Do whatever configuration, right-hand configuration makes sense to you. But first, just get the notes in your hand. Maybe just play the part with only hammer-ons, like only your left hand. Don't even worry about the right hand. Make sure the left hand knows what it's doing as it's running through the part, and then apply the right hand, see what the most comfortable picking configuration is, and work with that. So let me play it a couple more times, slow, just to make sure you know what it is. Starting on this 1, going up to the 1. One more time. And again, just like in part 1, we're going to play this part 2 times on F sharp and then 2 times on F natural. So we're just walking back a fret. Just like that, we do it 2 times there and then repeat on the F sharp. So that's pretty much it. This video is going to have 2 tracks with it like the usual. The first track, both of them, by the way, are going from 90 to 170. Again, trying to really push the tempo at the end there. The first video is going to be just this part. So part 2 just looks like this again. Play a little slower. Playing it 2 times on F sharp, 2 times on F natural, etc. And then the next track after that is going to be part 1 and part 2, but we're not going to play them together. That's for the final video. What we're going to do is play 1 repetition of part 1, which looked like this. Then hold it, 3, 4, and then part 2. And that takes up all of the time on the F sharp. So then we're going to do the whole thing again on the F natural. So part 1, 2, 3, 4. That was part 2, 3, 4, up to F sharp. Do it all over again. That's what the second track will do. And then, of course, you know, that's combining parts 1 and part 2, but you are pausing in between them. To prep yourself for the final video, I might just start practicing connecting both parts so that they are seamlessly running all the time. That would sound like this. That's the entire exercise that we'll do in that final video. And I'll kind of recap a little bit of that before we start the final track. But yeah, that's something you want to think about as you're moving through. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. Again, this track runs from 90 to 170. All right, that does it for part 2. As usual, if you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you all in the final part.